Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is a perfect example of what happens when dads just refuse to figure out grocery shopping. We're talking about a man who somehow manages to lose the list, ignore the list, or just completely fail at following it every single time. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. My dad keeps forgetting the grocery list, so I gave him a map, and now he's mad at me. I, 18-year-old female, am the only daughter in a family of 4 boys, 15, 13, 10, and 8. Our dad is pretty much a single parent since he and our mom divorced when the boys were younger, and mom lives out of the country with her husband. It's more or less become my job to be the mother 2.0, which is fine, I guess. I'm doing college online, so it's not like I wouldn't be home to do stuff anyway. One of my unofficial jobs is to help my dad grocery shop. I used to go with him to do it, and I would make the list myself and just grab what we needed. But now that I drive the boys around for their extracurriculars and I'm busy with school or chores when I'm not helping them, I don't really have the time. I just started writing the list and giving it to my dad so he could go out and get what we needed. Every single time this man has gone to the grocery store by himself, he's either completely forgotten about the list, remembered the list then lost it, remembered the list but ignored it, or somehow could not find more than half of the things on it. It's hard to cook an actual dinner when literally half of what he ends up bringing home is frozen meals and pasta sauce, but no pasta. I brought it up to him, but Dad keeps saying that if I would just make time to go with him, or if I went on my own, it would probably be easier to get what we needed. I said that we could switch jobs so he takes the boys to their things and I get groceries, but he said he doesn't know their schedules and he wouldn't want to mess it up for them. He said he'd go grocery shopping today and asked me to go with him, but I was working on some stuff for my finals before I had to drive the 10-year-old and 8-year-old to their practices, so I couldn't go. I started making the list like I usually do, but because I didn't want to end up with only half of what I'd put on there, I went and printed the layout of the grocery store. I even went online and found which aisle each product was supposed to be in, and I color-coded the stuff he needed to get. I left it for him on the table and then went to take the boys. When I was doing schoolwork during their practice, my dad called me asking why I felt the need to color-code a map for him like he was a toddler in need of specific instruction. I replied saying that I only thought the map might make it easier for him to find the things I put on the list, since I also made sure that everything was in stock online. It's been hours since we've gotten back home, and he's very clearly upset with me, but he did get the stuff on the list this time. I don't know, I think maybe I just made him feel like an idiot and that's why he's upset. Was the map thing a little too much? Edit. I don't really talk to my mom much, so that's why I haven't asked her for help with this or anything. I don't even know what help she could provide since she lives like halfway across the world. My brothers do recognize that our dad doesn't really do much other than work and come home. The boys help when they can, and they offer to do more. I just usually tell them to focus on doing the few chores I've given them while I handle everything else, because it's just what I'm used to now. My 15-year-old brother will be doing most of the driving once he gets his license. He's got his permit right now, so I can't just send him out on his own, LOL. Well done, OP. Your dad's asking too much of you, and he's avoiding his responsibility as the parent. He could and should learn their schedules. He just doesn't want to. You should have a serious talk with him about he either steps up or he hires help. And our second story. My OSHA complaint cost them their careers. When I first started at the factory, it was a decent place to work. The president at the time genuinely cared about the employees, and you could see that in the way things ran. But as always, power-hungry individuals tend to ruin a good thing. A group of self-serving underlings manipulated upper management into believing he was at fault for issues that weren't his, and he got replaced. The guy who succeeded him was okay, nothing great, but not the worst. My supervisor was a different story, though. Sure, he left me alone most of the time because I knew my job and got it done without fuss, but he was the type to throw others under the bus just to save himself. Brown-noser extraordinaire. This story takes place during a miserable heat wave. Each area of the factory was supposed to have its own relief measures, fans, cooling stations, you name it. But our department's equipment constantly got borrowed and never returned. Over the course of several months, I reported this to the supervisor repeatedly. Every time it was the same response: nothing. He didn't care, and nothing was ever done about it. Then came that Monday. The supervisor was extra pushy about getting production started. I told him again that we didn't have our relief equipment. His response? He didn't care. Just start working. I wasn't having it this time. I stood my ground and told him flat out, find our stuff, bring it back, and then we'll talk about starting production. But until then, no. He brushed me off, probably thinking I was bluffing. About 30 minutes later, he came back and saw we still hadn't started. I repeated myself. I told him we needed our fans and cooling gear or we weren't moving forward. He didn't like it, but what could he do? He stomped off, came back 10 minutes later with our fans, and we got to work. That week, we hit all our production goals before Friday rolled around. Everything was running smoothly until it wasn't. On Thursday, right before clocking out, the supervisor came to me and said the PM, essentially the president, but with a fancier title and less pay because corporate games, wanted to see me. He escorted me to the office, and there it was, termination. The reason, insubordination. Let's be real. Everyone in that room knew the real reason was because I called out the supervisor for trying to force us to work in unsafe conditions. It wasn't a good look for the company, and they couldn't risk me causing more trouble, so they decided to silence me. I kept calm, as much as I could anyway, and left without a scene. But here's the thing. They didn't know I had years of OSHA violations documented. I had receipts, meticulous records of every unsafe practice, broken rule, and flat-out negligence. The factory's motto had basically become, do whatever it takes to meet production and only pretend to care about safety when an audit is coming. I wasn't about to let that slide. I sent everything, names, dates, incidents, photos, you name it, to OSHA. I knew it wouldn't be an overnight process, but I was patient. Sure enough, about a year later, I got an update from a former coworker. The supervisor and PM both terminated. When I started asking pointed questions about the reasons behind their firing, my coworker caught on. He laughed and said, "You had something to do with this, didn't you?" I just smiled. Thinking about it still makes me grin. They thought they could shut me up, but instead they ended up paying the price for their own failures. Karma, baby. It's also pretty satisfying that your former coworker immediately put two and two together when the axe fell on those two clowns. The fact that people in the factory knew exactly why those firings happened, that's just the cherry on top. And our last story. The will was clear. My sibling thought they could steal my inheritance, so I had them thrown out. Losing my parents was devastating. But at least I thought one thing would be simple. The estate was to be split evenly between my sibling and me. My parents had always made their intentions clear, and as executor of the estate, it was my job to ensure their wishes were carried out. The estate consisted of a fully paid-off $600K house and $1.2 million in investments, meaning $900K each, no arguments, no negotiations. But my sibling had other ideas. We couldn't be more different. I've worked for everything I have, countless sleepless nights, money spent on advanced education, and years of building a solid career. I own my own home, but I live in a high cost of living area and have kids whose futures I need to secure. Living for the moment has always been the way, never saving, never planning for the future. That's not my problem. We all make choices, and this was one I refused to be punished for. After the will reading, my sibling and a partner cornered me with a proposal. The demand was simple. They would keep the house, and we would split the investments 50-50. That would leave them with $900K in assets and me with only $600K. The reasoning? You already own a home. We never will at this rate. I almost laughed. This wasn't some charity fund to reward poor financial choices. It was our parents' estate, and it was being split evenly as intended. I kept my voice calm and professional as I laid out three options: sell the house and split the proceeds equally. They take the house and I take $900K from the investments while they get the remaining $300K. Turn the house into a rental through an LLC with all rental profits split 50-50 under a strict legal agreement. Before I even finished speaking, the partner lost it. The partner immediately started shrieking about how I was selfish, privileged, and greedy for not helping them achieve homeownership. But then, in an Olympic-level leap of delusion, came the accusation I never saw coming. You're homophobic and transphobic for denying us a house. That's when I knew there was zero reasoning with these people. This wasn't just entitlement, this was manipulation. I turned to my sibling, waiting for some kind of rational response, but instead of speaking up, they just stood there silent. No attempt to stop the nonsense, no attempt to defend their ridiculous demand. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about the partner, it was a planned ambush to pressure me into backing down. I ended the discussion right there, turned around and walked away. I thought that was the end of it. A few days later, I went to check on the house, and what did I find? Boxes, luggage, furniture. My sibling and the partner had already started moving in. I called immediately demanding an explanation. My sibling, as casual as ever, acted like this was no big deal. Well, since we're taking the house, we figured we'd just start settling in. I saw red. You're not taking anything. You don't own this house. You don't even have permission to be inside. The response? Well, you're not living here, so what does it matter? That was it. I was done. I hung up and immediately called the police. This wasn't just some family dispute anymore. This was trespassing. When the officers arrived, I provided all the legal documents proving I was the executor and that my sibling had no right to be in the house. It took them all of 5 minutes to determine that my sibling and the partner were illegally occupying the property. They were given 10 minutes to pack their things and leave voluntarily. And then the partner started screaming again. This is discrimination. This is a violation of our rights. The officers didn't even blink. You can take it up with the courts. Right now, you're leaving. My sibling stood there looking humiliated but silent while the partner ranted and raved about how I was oppressing them. But it didn't matter. They were escorted out, and the house was locked up for good. After that disaster, I completely shut down negotiations. The house is being sold, and we'll split every last cent the way the will originally stated. They can scream and cry all they want, but there will be no special treatment, no favors, no bending the rules to fit their entitlement. I see why you're the executor. You gave them very reasonable options. 2 out of the 3 of your ideas present them an immediate path to homeownership. On the other hand, they're only giving you grief. Your sibling's partner's being a jerk, and you should completely ignore their opinions on inheritance matters. They have no say or leverage whatsoever. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.